This is attempt number 3 at this stinking video. And now the lighting is all weird because the sun has totally moved. We have jumped from incredibly sunny to incredibly cloudy very quickly. So hopefully that's not an issue. What's up guys, my name is Jess, I'm the creator of Pinkrex, and today I wanted to go over 10 of the most common houseplant mistakes I see new plant parents make. If you like this type of content and you'd like to see more of it, please drop a like and subscribe to Pinkrex. I do plant and video game content, so if you have subjects for either one of those things that you'd like me to cover, please drop a comment below and let me know. Without any further ado, here are my 10 most common new plant parent houseplant mistakes. The houseplant industry pretty much skyrocketed because of 2020 and 2021. Everybody being cooped up in their houses and wanting to get into houseplants because they're nice to have around, and it's cool to see something change and grow over time. It helps us understand the world around us. I went to school for environmental science and minored in plant science, so I was always a little bit crazy about it. I worked as a houseplant specialist at a local greenhouse at the beginning of 2020 before I started working from home, and I noticed a huge jump in demand for plants like Monstera deliciosa and Monstera addisonii. Those were probably the two most popular ones that we carried and sold. We could not hold on to them. They flew off the shelves. I loved seeing people take home their first big plant, which is usually the Monstera deliciosa, just because of its growth habits and because of the way it climbs. People get excited. But along with all of these people wanting to buy new plants and not really knowing how to take care of them, the first issue that I started to see that I wanted to talk about today was people overcaring for plants. You are all excited, you got this new plant, you talk about it a little bit at the greenhouse, maybe get some tips on it, take it home and you want to instantly repot it, you want to instantly water it, you want to instantly do all these things with it, and the best thing you can do for a new plant is to just set it off by itself and leave it alone for a little while. Especially if you brought it home from a full sun greenhouse, it needs to sit, it needs to acclimate, just let it do its thing for a little while. I would give it at least 2 weeks, preferably a month if you can. Some people wait a couple months. I have never found it necessary to wait that long, but definitely it's important to let your plant acclimate before you try to change its soil or its pot or its anything. The location change is enough for the plant for now, just let it rest. Problem number 2 was people not researching the plants that were best suited for their space. So again, if you're at like a mostly full sun greenhouse, high humidity, lots and lots of light, and you take a plant home and you're not really sure how to take care of it, but you figure it'll be okay, and you sit it in a corner of your apartment that has one window in the kitchen, and that's where it lives, it's not gonna do really well. It's important to remember that indirect light to plants is usually more light than we realize. There are some plants that can thrive in a corner and you never have to look at them or think about them. Like ZZ plants are well known for pretty much thriving on neglect, so are lots of types of snake plants. Goes along with, problem number 1, just leaving your plant alone. ZZ plants need that all the time, not just when you first get it, like all the time. Don't bug them. They like to be left alone. They don't like to be watered. If you water your ZZ plant more often than you pay your rent, you're watering it too much. But again, ZZ plants, snake plants, low light plants will never really be a thriving plant in that kind of situation. They probably need something closer to medium light to grow and be as happy as they can be. But again, you can put a pothos in a windowless bathroom for 3 months and it does just fine. So I don't know. It's case by case, I guess. So the third most common mistake I often see people making, whether or not you're new to plants, is buying a whole bunch of small little tiny plants or cuttings online because they're cheaper and they're super available, and then you don't have the proper conditions for really young plants, so they just end up dying, and it's this vicious cycle of buying and losing all of these tiny plants when you could have just bought one big plant. But what's the fun in that? I don't know. Maybe you like a challenge, but I know it's especially important with newer plant parents to try to lean towards older plants, more mature plants that have more established root systems and have big established leaves so they can photosynthesize properly. One of the most common ways that I see people kind of drop money on cheaper plants through ordering them online is wet stick propagations. Most commonly, this is seen with Monstera albo and other types of albo variegated plants right now, and it's just not worth it if you're not experienced starting plants that way. I would say if you are trying to work yourself up to buying a wet stick node of a Monstera albo, try propagating something that isn't variegated first with a wet stick method. Like take a cutting of a midsection of a heartleaf philodendron or a pothos or anything that is not super variegated, and see if you can grow it in moss. See if you can grow it in a little greenhouse setup in ideal growing conditions for starting that root and getting that first leaf out. The fourth most common problem I see is people who will bring a plant home that's in like 100% peat mixture, because that's how it was started in retail or in commercial cultivation, and they'll bring it home and just take that same soil and put it in a pot, or they'll take it home, completely take the soil off, and then put the wrong wrong type of soil back in with it. My number one tip for avoiding improper soil mix is just to do your homework. Like, this is a great place to start. There are so many good videos on YouTube about how to mix up proper aeroid mix, how to mix up proper mix for all kinds of really specific plant situations. Along with that, my other tip would be don't ever just buy regular pre-mixed generic potting soil and put an expensive plant in it. Don't do that. It will not drain. I feel like Miracle-Gro is generally hated on by the plant community. I don't mind it. I use it as like a base if I have outdoor potting things to do or if I have less valuable plants to pot up, but generally I would lean towards other brands. I personally really like a brand called Black Gold. There's another brand called Fertilome that has a really great orchid mix that I use for my aeroid plants. I mix it with some sphagnum moss and call her good. And so far it has worked, and I have many aeroids right now. So going along improper soil mixtures is my fifth most common issue, which is like general repotting fails. Along with not repotting things right away, I've seen in many cases people that go to like Goodwill and find a cute little bowl or container and they're like, this would make such a good pot, and they bring it home and they put their plant in it. They just like take it out of the soil and put it in there, and that container or even like decorative cover pots don't have drainage holes. And this is a huge issue. You do not want to put a plant in a pot without a drainage hole. So some advice for when you bring home a pot or a container or what have you that doesn't have a drainage hole and you really want to put a plant in it, there are two options. You can either keep the plant in a nursery pot and just set it in there. Sometimes the nursery pot is going to stick out. Sometimes it just looks a little funky in general, but it is really good because then you can take it out, water it properly, let it drain properly, and then put it back without worrying about the moisture being trapped in there too much. There's still going to be some of that if the container doesn't have a drainage hole and you don't let it drain all the way after watering. But the number one piece of advice that I would offer is just drill it a drainage hole. There are super affordable masonry drill bit sets available at places like Walmart. I know I got mine for like $10, and I have got so many cute little pots from the clearance section at Goodwill. It totally cuts out the worry of, is my plant going to rot because it doesn't have any drainage? And then along with drainage, make sure that you're not up potting something to a giant pot right away. If something has little tiny roots and you put it in a giant mass of soil, it's probably not going to dry out properly in between waterings because there's so much soil to root ratio that a lot of that water is just chilling out in there and not getting absorbed. General rule of thumb for up potting plants is you don't want to go more than 2 inches taller or wider than the pot it was previously in. If you have a monstera and it's in a pot, I can guarantee you it's probably going to be fine for a little bit longer. You do not need to repot it right now. The sixth mistake that comes to mind when I think of new plant parents is not necessarily a mistake so much as it is just a growing parameter that you should keep an eye on. It's that humidity isn't always optional. For a lot of commercially cultivated plants that are sensitive to humidity, the first one that comes to mind for a lot of people is calatheas. I have a rattlesnake calathea, or a Calathea lancifolia is its scientific name. And I also have a philodendron Florida ghost and a philodendron verrucosum. And I know those three specifically have been my most picky plants with needing high humidity at all times. If you live in a place where it gets dry for part of the year, or if it's dry all year, just get a humidifier for whatever room you're growing those plants in. Make sure there's proper airflow, and then they'll probably be happier. Heat mat, you could tug a little heat mat under there, might help. They're available. Amazon has relatively cheap heat mats. Mine is from Amazon. Number 7, especially with plants like alocasias, I find that people aren't really watching or checking for pests. Especially if you're at a greenhouse and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to have this alocasia. Make sure that you're flipping over, checking its leaves, checking for mealybugs, spider mites. Fungus gnats are kind of unavoidable. For the most part. If you buy plants that are in soil, you can kind of work against them, but I've never found a super perfect way to get rid of all of them all the time. They come and go. Now, another important part of keeping ahead of pest control would be to do like a pre-treatment of any kind when you get a plant in right away. Before you set it off to acclimate in a corner by itself, you want to make sure, I always do like a real simple neem oil kind of spray down, let it sit and wipe it down, and then give it a good rinse. It's just going to help prevent any pests that might be hiding in the nooks and crannies of your plant establish a population among your other plants, which is definitely not something you want. If you've ever had to deal with like a mass outbreak of mealybugs or spider mites, you know what I'm talking about. Going along with making sure to check for pests at the greenhouse when you get it home, make sure that you are regularly dusting your plants. I usually like to give all my plants a good wipe down like every other month. I say regularly, but I don't know, for some people that might seem like a huge thing. So problem number 8 is getting too many plants all at once. A lot of times I'll see like a sale or a clearance rack or something and I'm tempted to just buy all of the plants. And I have done that before, and it's doable for somebody if you have the time, space, and resources to take care of a whole bunch more plants all at once. I know especially for me, I have enough plants. I don't need to go out and buy 20 more plants all at once. I have seen people do it. Probably it's super fun. to go out and have like the new product high of having a whole bunch of new plants. I know I've seen people go out and buy a whole bunch of plants at once and then have, you know, a whole bunch of them die because they don't know how to properly take care of this many new plants all at once. And that's really hard on people as new plant parents especially. It takes away your self-confidence in being able to take care of plants in general, and it's just not good. It's a waste of money. Don't do it. Moderation. Mistake number 9 happens in every facet of the plant community. Be you new, experienced, old, your grandma has kept plants for 34 years and she thinks she knows everything, that kind of thing. If you put your plants, if you're moving into a new space especially, you need to pay attention to where the air currents are flowing from and going to from places like your AC vents and your heat ducts. This is something I saw a lot when I was working as a houseplant specialist. I would have people come in and say, hey, here's my plant, I don't know what's going on. Why is the whole back side of it completely crisped up, but the front side looks fine? And it's usually because it's sitting above one of those heat vents on people's floors, or if people have plants hanging from the ceiling and they're not paying enough attention to where their AC is going during the summer. A lot of times that cold air flowing over that tropical plant isn't real good for it either. It can make it droop, it can kill the leaves off, and it usually just ends up crisping around the edges. It doesn't look good. We're not here for it. Number 10 is kind of a joke. It's not even a funny joke. I see a lot of times on blog posts and stuff that people will keep to a strict schedule in watering their plants, and having somewhere around 150 plants right now, I can tell you that that is not a real thing. You cannot have like every Sunday I'm going to water all of my plants, because not all of your plants will need it, and some of your plants will need it more frequently than that. One of the things that I do, or I see a lot of other people do, is you wake up in the morning, you get your coffee, and I always save chopsticks from sushi. I know that's weird, but bear with me. And instead of using a moisture meter, because a lot of times moisture meters can be inaccurate or just stop working after a certain amount of time, it helps to have a wooden chopstick or a bamboo chopstick, because you can stick it down in the soil for a second, pull it up. If the end of it has any black or moistened dirt, it's just not ready to water yet. Give it a couple more days. Especially things like monsteras. You can even if you don't want to go around and check all of your plant soil, just go around and pick them up. And eventually, once you've had a plant for a while, you'll realize that it has a different weight when it needs water versus when it doesn't. But watering on a strict schedule is not something that people who have more than 10 plants can actually do. It is important to pay attention to which plants have differences in their potting situation and their lighting situation. Like, for instance, a plant in a plastic pot that's in a darker part of the room is going to need significantly less water than a plant in a porous pot like a terracotta or stoneware that's under a grow light or on a heat mat. They're just going to need totally different things, so just keep an eye on it. Check it every now and then. Checking it every day is the best, but check on it every now and then as you can. What we do, how it be. That's all I've got for today, so if you like the video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Pink Rex, and drop a comment down below. Let me know if you agree with my plant mistakes, plant care tips. Let me know if you disagree. Let me know why. And also, if you have any other ideas for topics for me to cover related to plants, video games, or otherwise, I'm always looking for content suggestions. So drop a comment down below and I will pin my favorite comment at the top of the comments if I get enough comments. Comment something, please. Okay, anyway, thanks for watching, bye! I always do this, I always go like, thanks for watching, bye. I was always told it's like a Midwest thing to not know how to end a phone call or a conversation where you stand in the doorway, you're on the phone and your mom is like, okay, I'll talk to you later. And you're like, oh yeah, bud, watch out for deer. Okay, see you soon. No, I'll see you soon. Have a good night then. Tell Nancy I said hi. But anyway, this is the end of the video. Now is the end. Okay, bye.